Well, hey guys, welcome to this week's episode of Conversations. I'm super excited to jump into this week's topic. Before we do that, I just want to thank every single person who listens to this podcast and watches this on YouTube. Seriously, it means the world. It's been so fun just to continue to grow with each and every single one of you, whether we have guests or whether it's a solo podcast and we're talking about church stuff or entrepreneurship stuff. Basically, I'm just super thankful for each and every single one of you. So today we're going to be talking about this concept of starting and sustaining a church. So I've just put together a couple thoughts here. There's no linear path. There's no really general, clear point to this episode, but more lines. I just want to submit some thoughts to you around this concept of, man, starting something is great, but how do we sustain something? I believe success is built off of sustainability and scalability. So in my experience anyways of working with businesses, working with entrepreneurs, or even the church space, man, starting something's cool, but I really want to last. I want to build something that is sustainable and is so much bigger than myself, so much bigger than just whatever I can build or whatever I think God wants to do. So really, again, there's just going to be a couple thoughts here that I would love to submit to you. And again, I've never said that these ideas, any of our episodes, I believe this is like 96 or 97, none of these ideas that we talk through, I would say some of the ideas obviously are absolute truths when we talk about stuff from the Bible, but a lot of this is just thoughts, and that's the whole point of conversations is, man, I just want to submit some thoughts to you as a friend listening to this, and hopefully we're going to get a little bit better today. Because if there's one thing that I believe in 2024, as even processing it this morning, sometimes I believe the church solves problems that don't exist. And sometimes I believe that we're trying to just continue to do something without the concept of, man, any organization evolves. If you look at Acts 2, 2,000 years ago to now, the church has evolved a little bit. Our truths have not. The transformation that happens in people's lives has not. But again, our methods and our hows definitely have evolved and changed because we're technological, we're advanced, we're a society who is looking ahead more than we're looking behind. So how do we continue to stay relevant? How do we continue to not just be the anomaly with 10 people on the side of the road, but actually make an impact and create change in our cities? So again, these are just some thoughts that I want to submit to you and we'll hopefully grow together. So, number one, how can we naturally disrupt what people are thinking about or doing? Something that I just said earlier, but I believe is so imperative is to think about how can we naturally disrupt people's thinking around the church? So, if you ask 100 people right now, no matter their belief system, you just walk around your city, walk around your neighborhood and say, hey, I have a question. What are your thoughts on the church? And again, we got to be super careful with having thoughts towards God's bride. But when most people who don't know Jesus, who aren't super bought in to what God's doing on earth, I would venture to say that it's a negative connotation towards the church, whether they are right or wrong, that is their belief and their thinking. So for us, instead of us just going, well, they just don't get it, they just need to read the Bible more. Yeah, I think they should read the Bible more too, but before they're going to read the Bible, they're going to be reading you. And if they read you and you're a rude person, you don't have integrity, you're not the same person privately as publicly, they're going to instantly go, well, yeah, that's just exactly what I thought the church was. And you just created the path for them to be right. And for us, I want to naturally, and again, naturally, not fake, I want to disrupt what people are thinking about or doing in my context or my environment. And again, you can think about this at scale with social media and with all that, but really what I'm trying to submit to you is how do we naturally disrupt people's negative connotation around the church? In my opinion, that looks like actually being who you say you are. So if you got a slogan on your wall, you got a slogan on your site, be that. And if you're not that, remove it from the wall, remove it from the website. Something that I've seen a lot in the church is we tend to like slogans, we tend to like tweetable things, which again, I love those things. I love good iterations or analogies or whatever. All that stuff is super great. I love it. The problem is when we don't actually live it. I believe right leading comes from right living. And when we are in the church, we want to, in 2024, you want to disrupt people's thinking Be who you say you are. And if you're not that, continue to evolve and grow and remove that stuff from your language. Man, we're excellent. If you're not excellent, and again, this takes a whole different level of self-awareness that you probably need to have somebody who's not in your environment to come in and help you see the things that you don't see, because if there's one thing I've known is the more you're in something, the more you become blind to its blind spots. So we want to make sure that we're being super unapologetic that, hey, we don't have anything figured out. We're not perfect. But if you're going to say, man, we believe in community, but the only time people hang out is when they're forced to, I don't know if you're about community. I think we're probably about structure, and again, it just takes a intentional level of honesty that I don't think a lot of people want to have. But again, if you want to naturally, and this is, by the way, this is how you make change. This is how you actually involve yourself in a city, is continuing to push forward and disrupt what people think about you, the organization, and the movement. So number 2, when times get hard, think about what's the story you want to tell after it's over and work backwards from there. So when times get hard, because when you're starting something, when you're starting a business, when you're 2 months into a church plant and you built your whole life around this concept and now it's getting hard, people aren't showing up on time, man, you gotta sit by yourself and you gotta sit with a trusted person and think out loud. Think out loud with them and say, hey, what's the story we want to tell after this is over? When we win, when this thing is flourishing, when we're blowing up, when everything we imagine is going right, what's the story we want to tell through this season? And this could be in the micro scale, by the way, of your life. Maybe you're going through a really hard time. Maybe you're struggling with something. Man, if you could sit down with a journal and process and write out, what's the story I'm going to tell to somebody to encourage them when this season is over? When you can get to that point of understanding that you can say the best is yet to come 1,000, and I say that every single day, and as a belief system to me, but you can say that all you want, but until you have it in your mind and you can envision what it looks like 5 years on the line when this season is no longer here, what's that doing, by the way, is it's putting faith in you and that's putting vision in you. And when you have vision and faith, anything's possible. Anything's possible when we understand that there's actually a light at the end of the tunnel. And what happens is, especially when you're starting a business, or especially when you're trying to start a church or come in and revitalize an organization, you see all the things that are wrong. Because leaders, that's what we do. We see problems and we continue to be the solution. What is challenging is when the problems are no longer able to be solved just by you. And I've seen this a lot, and that's where we get an analysis paralysis. We can't understand. We can't get a vision or a way out. We don't know how. One, you got to be able to create margin. Margin, I believe, is the best place for you to live when you want to solve problems. When you want to just be busy and you don't want to be effective, don't have margin. Because margin creates space for you to think about the problems and bring solutions. Some of the best ideas I've ever had in my life that probably still aren't even public yet happen when I create margin in my life to process, to pray, to even think, to give yourself permission to think about the problems that are in your ecosystem. So when times get hard, man, think about in the future, what story do I want to tell my kids that we made it through this, that we pushed through, we persevered, we were persistent, we did the best with what we had, or man, I just gave up and I didn't care about it. We want to make sure that we're pushing forward. So number 3, hype is not enough. You need substance. This goes into something that I mentioned right at the beginning, but a lot of organizations or churches solve problems that don't exist. Or they're solving a problem that somebody else is doing better than them, but they just think that they have to do it. And again, that's such a small way of thinking. There are so many organizations in your city that are doing such a great job at whatever thing you're processing. Your job is just to be the nice guy and the humble guy to ask to partner with them. Because again, you might not have the greatest minds, but you might have hands that would love to serve and participate in whatever they're doing. So again, if you want to actually have substance in your organization or your church, stop building it off of hype. Again, you don't want to be built off of events. You want to be built off of community. You don't want to be built off of events. You want to be built off of life change. And again, events are great. I believe every church, every organization should have events. You should celebrate. You should create marks and moments for people to be able to see in the past. These were some of the best days. You should have that conference. You should have that youth night. I'm not saying don't have that, but again, hype will not sustain you. Hype is not sustainable. Hype is good for a moment, but you need some substance. And how you acquire substance, by the way, is you solve a real problem in your city. That, by the way, is significant enough that there is enough value to go around. So you got to actually solve a real problem in your city. Here's a 2024 epidemic that we've talked about 1,000 times in church, but actually not solving: loneliness. So we have the most access to online ever before, but for some reason we're the most lonely generation in the history of the world. Okay, churches say that a lot. I've heard that quoted about 1,000 times on Instagram. What are we doing about it? And again, I'm not saying create a system within your church that the people in your church actually have access to. I'm saying solve the real problem in your city, which, by the way, you got to be in the city to know the problems of your city. Many times what we do is we create our own church cul-de-sac and we don't actually integrate with our cities. I believe that is the biggest step to failure as an organization, is to think that you have it all figured out, that you're coming in and you're coming in to disrupt in a negative way, but you think it's a positive way. Yes, we do. We believe Jesus should be lifted in our city more than any name. He is the solution to every single problem in our cities, but most people won't go directly to Jesus. Like I said, they'll go to you. And if they won't go to you, they're not going to go to anybody. They're going to go to whatever they've been trying themselves. And we understand that people have been trying everything else in the world because the church has such a negative connotation in most people's eyes. I'm not saying everybody, but most people have a negative connotation. So again, we got to be able to integrate. We got to be able to create space. We got to have a level of humility in our lives to sit at a dinner table, to sit at a restaurant, to sit at a networking event. And again, to be a listener. You want to have influence, you want to have substance. Be a church, be a team that listens to your city. By the way, practically, this doesn't look like going to every event and doing everything. This might look like going to a coffee shop, going to a library, going to a restaurant, going to whatever, and opening up your ears. What are people talking about in your city? What are people processing with their friends at a coffee shop? And again, you're not eavesdropping, but you are listening. There's got to be a level of intentionality when it comes to listening and hearing your city. And again, create the solution to that by not systematizing it, but actually having substance in that area. So you might have small groups that only read scripture and they're in people's homes. That might not be the best method to solve isolation and loneliness in people. Because somebody who's lonely and isolated, they don't want to go to some random person's house. They don't want, and again, it's thinking about, man, what are the problems in my city? How do we create a solution to this by partnering and being a part of the solution of the grander scheme of our city? Again, a great church integrates with their city. Every city has a hospital. Every city has the go-to grocery store. Every city has a go-to coffee shop. In my opinion, every city should have a go-to church. And again, not one specific church. I believe the capital C church. We should just be a part of the community. We should be a part of society. And again, this happens when we believe that we can integrate into cities. Our churches look like our cities. They sound like our cities. That is how we're going to win. So again, you need to be able to have substance, create substance by listening and actually solving problems to people who are already attending your church. So next one here, this one is specifically around hiring. Again, hiring is a touchy subject when it comes to the church. I believe if you can do it, you aren't hiring the right people, because you should hire people better than you. Don't hire. I actually just interviewed somebody. I don't know if it'll come out before this or after this, but his name's Justin Tapp. He's an entrepreneur. And he said the biggest mistake churches make in hiring is the lead pastor, whoever's hiring the person, they hire themselves. So you look at the staff, they have 10 staff members. All of them are the same personality as them. They all think like them. They all are gifted in the same exact way as them. Everyone's different, I understand that, but there is a general sentiment around stop hiring people who think like you, who are you, by the way. We don't want copycats. And We don't want people that all do the same thing or are gifted as the same things. We want to hire one gifting diversity. So if you're super great at this, you need to hire the opposite. And don't hire your strengths, by the way, hire your weaknesses. If you already are doing something successful, don't bring somebody in because you're hiring somebody to solve a problem in your organization and to bring health to something, which means you need to hire people who actually know what they're doing. Don't hire yes men. Don't hire the little kids who grew up in your organization who don't know any other thing. And we need to hire people who are better than us. Again, this all starts, by the way, with actually being able to interview multiple people. Something that I've seen happen in church that's not healthy is you only interview one person, and it's the person who's already been your puppet for years. You don't want puppets around. You want people who are going to be hired to bring solutions, to bring change, to push people, to challenge thinking, not challenge values. We don't change our values. But again, values evolve, by the way. Values are created in crisis, not when we're winning. Because you can really tell the strength of an organization or who we are, not when we're in peaks, but we're in valleys, because growth happens in the valley, by the way. Nothing grows in Mount Everest. There's just snow. Growth happens in the valley. So if you can do it, by the way, like I said, you are not hiring the right people. You got to hire people who do things better than you that you can't do. That's the whole point of being a leader. You're not a leader, by the way, if you can only create people who are not smarter than you, not better than you. You're a leader when you're actually having people in your space, in your world, who are better than you, and you're not insecure. I've seen a lot of leaders crumble when they get around somebody who knows more than them. I love that. I love when people know more than me, are better than me, because one, I can learn. Two, I don't have to think about it because that's just their gifting, their space. We got to give people the freedom and permission to lead at the level in which they want to. If you have chemistry, you won't need loyalty. I've talked about this almost every single episode. We're almost at 100, and I believe I've talked about this almost every single time. This concept of loyalty, this concept of honor, this concept of even respect. I believe all those things are super imperative. These things all come from a byproduct of chemistry. You got to be able to hire and have team around you that you guys actually have chemistry. Again, getting people on the bus is one thing. Because once they're on the bus, the right people are on the bus, and we can figure out the seats. Like we don't just hire people and place them in seat immediately. We gotta bring people on our teams. Again, not just hiring, because we're leading volunteers. We're leading people who are giving their time and committing to building the church. Not everyone's gonna be hired, especially if you want to have a healthy church that actually is servant leader led, not staff led. This whole podcast is not for staff led churches. This is for people who are actually creating change in their city through volunteers and through people who are sacrificing. We got to seek to find people that you have chemistry with. And chemistry sometimes is caught, sure. But a lot of times we got to be able to find the people around us who have similarities. There's commonalities. There's an aligned vision, there's an aligned personality sometimes, or the opposite. But more than that, something super practical do you look for? Do you guys laugh at the same things? If you don't laugh at the same things, it's going to be really hard to endure the concept of building church. Church is hard, by the way. It's not the easiest thing in the world. It's probably one of the most hard things in the world because we are literally creating something out of nothing, and God builds his church through you. It is hard work. You have to count the cost when it comes to starting and even building the church with God. So do you guys laugh at the same things? Do you guys have fun doing the same things? Even the micro scale. And by the way, when you lead a large organization, you're not going to be able to laugh at the same things with all 50 people. The difference is, can you help people find one another and connect and have commonalities with each other? And you yourself, you need to have your core team. You guys should laugh at the same things. You guys should have fun doing the same things. If you can't laugh together, you can't build together. And not the fake laugh that we just all are trying to figure it out and force it. This level of chemistry cannot be forced. And again, that's okay. That's why there's so many beautiful churches in your city, is because people are going to naturally connect with people where they're just similar. They might not be similar backgrounds, but they have similar vision. They have similar personality goals, like I've said a couple times already. So seek to find chemistry. We don't need loyalty. Again, I don't need you to be loyal to me. I need you to be loyal to the message of Jesus, which means you might be here for 6 days or 6 years. Regardless, when you're in my proximity, you're going to feel loved, you're going to feel seen, you're going to feel challenged, you're going to feel heard, regardless. And if I live my life like this, which means you're not mine, this church is not mine, this mission is not mine, it's all God's. I'm just a vessel. A vessel does not need to be clean, it just needs to be empty. So when you're an empty vessel, you understand that God will do the filling. He will continue to fill you up. One, fill you up with real people who have real problems that, again, we're supposed to be the listening ear to help them feel known and needed and heard and valued. But it all goes back to this concept of chemistry. Can we vacation together? Can we rent an Airbnb and have fun together? Do we watch the same movies? Do we like the same things? This all goes back to the basis of community. Man, are we eating together? Are we having fun together? You are not in community with people you don't eat with. And again, the church uses the word community like it's their favorite word on the planet. I do as well. But again, I believe you're in my community. We're in community with one another when we eat together, when we laugh together, when we have moments together outside of a Sunday or Wednesday. You got to make sure your team is having fun together. And sometimes fun is intentional. Sometimes fun is not always fun. We got to be able to party with a purpose. Man, church got over late. That's okay. We're still going to hang out and have fun. We're going to be tired doing it. That's okay. I would rather be tired and create a moment than get 2 extra hours of sleep and have no memory together, because that will be way more sustainable than just doing cool services. So seek to curate and find people that have similar chemistry. Last 3 here, don't overemphasize a launch. Launching is not sustainable. Launching isn't scalable. You got to think about a launch. Like, let's talk about a franchise of a Pepper Jack's. It's a fast food, quick dining restaurant. Name one time the date of a launch of a Pepper Jack's or Starbucks, or even think bigger than that. When did Uber launch? When did Airbnb launch? You could probably give me the general time frame, but you don't know the exact date. You don't know the numbers or the total revenue curated in the first day. You have no idea. You don't know how many staff members were on Facebook year 2. All that type of stuff, honestly, is for internal wins, because our wins right now probably are not where they should be. Because if you can pinpoint the actual, like the 100% truthful wins of, I just kind of want to have a big service so people think that I'm making a difference, or I want to have 1,000 people come to my church. All that stuff is so great. Have goals, but habits speak louder than goals. Goals are great, but do we have habits? Are we actually thinking of scale? Because you should always have scale in mind. Never do something that it wouldn't make sense to do when you're at the point of scale for your organization, which means we got to have the systems in place. We got to have a super clear mission in place. We got to have a strategy in place. Like, what is our Sundays? There's 1,000 different ways to do services. Should we do a service that is relevant for the people that are attending or for the future church that we're building? Always have scale in mind, and don't overemphasize the church launch. I'm telling you, launching is great. Sustaining is greater. Because guess what? You just spent 5 years planning one service, and the problem is you have a service in 6 days. And you can truly know that you're winning as an organization, as a church. You have a healthy culture. You have a winning team when you can sustainably do something over 3 weeks. So your load-in time, if you can do that successfully within 3 weeks, whatever targeted time you have, that means you're actually doing something right. When you can communicate and articulate your thoughts as a preacher 3 weeks in a row and there was no hang-ups, man, I think we're starting to figure this thing out. We don't have it mastered, but we're figuring it out. So don't overemphasize launch. Launching is great. Always have a moment, celebrate, take a moment. But again, we're focused on where God's going, and He is not into monuments. Anytime we build monuments in the church, we end up worshiping it. That's before Jesus, by the way. Anytime in the Bible and in society, when we create monuments, we end up worshiping the monument instead of the man. We want to worship the man, and we want to be a movement. God is much more focused on where we're going than where we were. By the way, you actually you can articulate your vision so well when people look to the future, not the past. So when you're talking about the church you see and the church that God has called you to build, when people are around you and they're thinking about the past, the way they thought it should be, the way that they think it should be, you're probably not articulating it in a sellable way. But when you can articulate your vision and people are seeing what you're seeing in the future, that means you can actually share a vision worth following. Most people have a hint of your culture, not the heart of your culture. Last two here. Most people have a hint of your culture. They have a little glimpse of your culture. They have a little glimpse of what it looks like to be a part of your team, be a part of a small group, be a part of a dinner party, whatever language you have. They have a hint of it, but they don't have the heart of it. People acquire the heart of your culture when you can consistently share it and people can finish your sentence before you say it. When they can finish the sentence that you are about to say, they have the heart. And tears point to your destiny. So you as a leader and people who are following you, tears always will point to your destiny. So when you're sharing the heart of your culture, the heart of your mission, tears always point to the person's place of that. So when you're talking about reaching the lost, or you're talking about reaching disciples, or you're talking about building leaders, whatever language or part of the message you're sharing when it comes to your leaders, there's always going to be something in somebody where their heart goes, ooh, I think that was for me. And again, that's where we help people understand this is where we're going. You don't have to be a part of it. You can say no. You have permission to say no. And you also have permission to say yes and be 100% committed. So again, we want to ensure people have the heart, because if they can catch the heart of what you're doing, which is why. Simon Sinek, start with why. Don't start with how. Don't start with what. Don't start with anything else. Start with why. How about where? Don't start with where. Start with why. Why does your organization exist? Why are you starting a church? Why are you starting this ministry in your church? And again, if you can articulate your why, people can attach themselves on it. They can see the future. They can see themselves in that. Then you have a clear, concise vision, and people are starting to feel the heart of it. Last, this is a thought that I've been hearing a lot. I can't get anyone to join my team. Think about this in the micro. You're leading the parking team. Nobody's joining the parking team. We need more parking volunteers. Anytime you hear need, by the way, within a space, the person is not leading right there. They're definitely following, because you don't need anything. Need should be removed from your language. We don't need this. We don't need more money. We don't need more volunteers. You always will live in lack if you consistently use the language of need, because you're not stewarding people. You're not stewarding what God's placed in your life. God will always bring more people when we live our lives saying, I'm not content, but I'm confident in the people He has put in my life. I'm going to build them up, and I'm going to help them see what I see. Because most of the time, to be honest, we don't take time to help people see what we see. So we're just not building leaders, we're building followers. And again, the goal of a leader is not to build more followers. The goal of a leader is to build more leaders. So I can't get anyone to join my team. I can't get anyone to join my launch team. I can't get anyone to join my church. I can't get anyone to buy our product. No, you can't get anyone to join you. You can't get anyone to join you. And again, this all goes back to self-awareness. Self-awareness, by the way, is probably the number one most important thing when you're a leader, because people will follow the real, authentic version of you. But if you don't know the real, authentic version of you, every single person's going to be following a different altered version of yourself, because you think that's the way people should follow you, which means I gotta fit in. No, you don't need to fit in. You need to stand out. That is the reason God called you. He called you to stand out, to be different. He called you to plant that church to be a different church. That's okay. We don't need to copy everything that everyone else is doing because there's already a church that's doing that in your city. So you don't need to do it. You just need to get behind them then, if that's what your goal is. And if you just want to be the guy, if you just want to be the leader, it's not a healthy motive to start anything. So I can't get anyone to join my team. No, you can't get anyone to join you. What that goes back to is, are you likable? Are you followable? Do you have integrity? Do you have humility? Do you listen more than you talk? And do you actually, like what I'm saying is, you actually listen? Like, do you have active listening skills when it comes to people? Every single one-on-one, every single conversation, every person you're meeting with, every pastoral conversation, like, actually listen to them. And again, most of the time what we're doing is we're listening with a motive to either get them on our team, to get them somewhere else. People are not projects. You cannot force anyone to do anything. What you can do is be a super great listener, affirm what they're saying, and say, hey, I hear you. And always go back to making sure that you're listening and hearing what they're communicating, which goes to, hey, what I'm hearing you say is blank. And you can just scale that down. Hey, what I'm hearing you say is you feel lonely. Hey, what I'm hearing you say is you don't feel like you can make a difference here. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. Or no, that's not what I'm saying. When you start to help people feel heard in conversations, you will always have great leaders around you, and you will always have people who think like you and maybe think better than you. But again, most of the time when it comes to people not acquiring more leaders, not having people follow them, not buy their product, it usually goes back to self introspection. Like, okay, so I'm going to inspect everything. And we always want to inspect what we expect, by the way. If you expect people to be on time, inspect it. Were people on time? I expect you to tithe. Okay, let's inspect it. Do people actually tithe? And again, most of the time, we're just too insecure to have expectations, but we should have expectations because expectations helps people feel like they win. Most people assume expectations is going to make people lose. But the reality is expectations actually help people win. And we want to have people win. We want to have people feel like they're winning. And if they don't know how to win or what's our target, what's our KPI, then we'll never have a space where we're winning. So you got to make sure that people can join you. People will always buy into you before they buy into your brand. People don't buy into brands, they buy into people. And the church, by the way, is not a brand. As a pastor, you listening to this, you're not a brand. You can post all your sermon clips all you want. You can have an email campaign. You can do all of that. You're not a brand. You're a servant. You did not sign up for success. You signed up to die. As a Christian, you signed up to pick up your cross daily. You signed up to be a martyr for Jesus. It might not look like what we're seeing across the world in the United States context. You signed up to be canceled. You're most like Jesus, by the way, when people are opposing the thing that you're building. You can read John 1 through 9, the start of Jesus' ministry. Everything he did, there was always the religious people pushing towards, hey, that's not the way we do it. That's wrong. No, you shouldn't do that then. You shouldn't heal him. It's the Sabbath. What happens is that points to Jesus' influence. Because if he wasn't doing anything of significance, he would have never had people challenge him. If you have people challenging you, hey, this is not how we do it. This is the way we do it. We've always done it this way. That's a pinpoint process that you're saying, hey, I'm actually doing something of significance when people are opposing me. Not people who don't know Jesus, people who do know Jesus. Your comment section might look like, oh my gosh, am I saying something wrong? Am I a heretic? You might be. I'm just kidding. But the reality is you might have a true level of influence when people are pushing back on your vision that you believe God has called you to do. So again, that's a level of confidence and security that you'll have to live in because most people will crumble when it comes to being a people pleaser, making sure that I'm a high achiever. All that stuff's cool. It's all a byproduct of having security and humility and understanding. If God called me, nobody can remove that call. No one can remove that anointing. No one can remove that level of confidence that God is putting inside of you, that boldness. But if God didn't put it there, people can remove it. And that's where we need to be able to decipher, was that God or was that my insecurity? So I can't get anyone to join my team. No, you can't get anyone to join you. So I believe all of these thoughts, again, these are just things that I'm processing. I believe, again, the church's days are so far ahead of us not behind us. I believe the church should be more relevant today than it was 2,000 years ago. I believe you as a leader in the church should be more relevant today than anyone else in the world. We should have the most influence. We should have the most wealth. We should have the most impact in our cities. We should be the best listeners. We should have the best counselors because we have the solution. And if you want to have any title, be it a CSO, Chief Servant Officer. Nobody's going to serve more than you. Nobody's going to listen more than you. Nobody's going to encourage more than you. No one's going to be more generous than you. And again, it's not competing against other people. It's competing against the version of yourself yesterday. So thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of Conversations. Again, I believe in you. I believe in what you're building. I think it is going to make an immense, insane impact in your city, in your context. If you continue to grow and continue to pinpoint the problems in your world and continue to put solutions on them. Thank you so much. We'll see you next week.